That's our cue. So we'll begin by saying a few prayers. Oh, why that's so big. That's so funny. It's my. Okay, I guess it's because I'm pinned. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clowns of every type of offering, actual and imagined. Declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. We dedicate our own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. How's everybody tonight? Welcome. Okay. Do we have to have a test on the names? This is Retta. This is Sherry. This is Roy. No, I can't do it.
Oh, McKeel.
McKeel,
Yeah.
Rose,
Leo.
Leo.
Yeah.
I remember that. That's Melissa and that's Sharon. And then there are all these people who just show us their names. So anyway, okay.
I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. Where's your mind tonight?
Here.
That's a good place for it to be because your body's here. So. How is your mind? It might be here. Are you aware of your mind at this moment? What's going on in your mind?
Purification.
Purification.
I'm still purifying from something earlier today.
I saw myself complaining about a complainer.
Those are always pretty priceless, aren't they? Really useful thoughts. It isn't important, really. I mean, obviously, when we're trying to transform a habit of mind, it does matter what we find going on in our mind. But the most important thing is to know what's going on in your mind, because the only way we have choice about what we want to, how we want to respond to whatever is happening or what, is by knowing, what's going on in our mind and choosing the next response, not just reacting. So becoming aware of what's going on in your mind is really a key piece of transformation, Yeah.
Lately, specifically this week, right, I have started to feel emotionless against or when conflict arises. And I don't know if it's part of the evolution or the self-defense mechanism or
You started to feel emotionless.
Yeah.
So you're just not reacting, you're not feeling anything, you're neutral. Is that what, I'm just trying to make sure I understand?
Right, with action plan towards whatever is triggering something that in the past, not too far
Yep.
behind, would have created an emotion, and that feeling itself, it's strange.
The neutral feeling?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it may, yeah, I don't know whether it's just a defense, mechanism trying to like, okay, I'm not going to show my feelings on this, not going to show anything kind of thing. Or if it is because you're trying to at least pause and not be reactive. So if it's that, then you're developing a new habit of, I don't have to react right away to whatever's happening, whatever's been said to me, whatever's going on. So and we never need to be reactive. We want to be so familiar with what's going on in our body and mind that we can choose, because our minds are really fast. So we're using our mind to know our mind. So it's not slow. It can also get really fast. What's slow is remembering to do it. So, but once it becomes a habit, it doesn't, it's not like it, you don't have to live your life in slow motion. But but being able to get ahead of our reactive energy, where we just, it's just like a button is pressed and we just blah, blah, blah. We just go all through the day like that. We want to be able to go to choose the tone of voice we use, the kind of way we respond, and also we want to choose whether we or not we really want to worry about everything. It's like, it's like we do a meditation on how when we label something a problem, how that shifts how we can respond to it, as opposed to just, this is what I'm doing right now, or I need to find a solution to, something I don't know or whatever. But it's, but if we use the word problem instead of, then we might just see it as something that has to end now. and we don't usually have control over that. So we want to be able to see how we label things. Oh, that's a problem. Or that person's a problem. Or, I don't want this to happen. So we can see that by the way we can even categorize something, we're already kind of deciding how to react to it. If you see it as a problem, what's a typical reaction?
You need a solution. You need a solution.
Well, that's good. That's not my response.
Oh,
Worry.
I worry,
Frustration.
or I get upset. Yeah, I get frustrated or irritated, or just sort of like, really, do I have to deal with this? Something stupid, something not helpful.
And have negative emotions from what you saw yourself just doing.
Yeah. And this is, and so if we just see what's going on inside us in response to that, it gives us a lot more space to just choose, respond like, oh, I need to come up with a solution, So, it's like when you walk out of your house and your tire's flat, you can immediately get just really annoyed. Why today? I'm in a hurry today. You can come up with all sorts of stories like it matters. I mean, none of that's going to help. Any of the complaining about it, the why me, or stupid car, or
What next?
Yeah.
What
The
next?
car.
what's next? Yes, exactly. That's what I do to my body when I wake up. Oh, what's next? So, but instead of just seeing it as something that you have to deal with, oh, okay, so all right. So whatever you have to do, if you don't know how to change your tire, change your tire. If you don't know how to change your tire, you call your,
AAA.
AAA or whoever, if you're like me and you lock your keys and your phone in the trunk of your car, you really have to get inventive. So it's, it's a matter of understanding that a lot of our suffering comes from the way we layer mental, negativity on top of something that's happening that doesn't have to be there at all, So if you don't react like, oh, this is a big problem, then you don't have that layer of suffering, because that's an agitated, uncomfortable mind, So the more we can notice the way we typically respond to things, we can see if we have some habits that are getting in our way of having a more peaceful day, That doesn't have anything to do with what's happening. Because you can have a flat tire, then, have your windshield fly off as you're driving down the road, and still have a peaceful day. That's the difference, is that if our peacefulness is dependent upon what's happening external to us, then we're at the mercy of things we can't control that are completely out of our hands. We can't control when traffic jams happen. We can't control when, it's the weather, whatever. We can't control those things. So being able to be peaceful and okay, knowing you can handle whatever it is, or you can't handle it, you find somebody who can, or whatever, just is a sort of a neutral response to whatever's happening. So part of that is noticing if you have this belief somehow that you should be able to control these. This really shouldn't happen to you. I'm organized. I have a schedule. Da 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 da. How dare this get in my way? And of course, we can't control anything that's outside of our body and mind. And we can't control our body. We think we can, but we lose control of that pretty early. But we can control how we use our body and how we use our speech and how we think about things. So this gives us all the power in the world. We have zero power over how other people think, what they say, and what they do. We have zero power over when things break, So, and we spend an awful lot of time trying to control these things. Other people, we we want things to be easy, or at least be what we want to have happen, and try to, escape from the things we don't want to happen. But we cannot do that. We don't have control over that. And so one of our big sources of suffering is this, this faulty belief that that we have more control than we have. We often think that it's our fault if something happens. Oh, I should have known this was going to go wrong. I do blah, blah, blah. And it's not true. So if we're paying attention to what's going in on our minds, what stories we're telling ourselves, then we can check up whether or not it's true. Because we might be telling ourselves something that's not true. We do it all the time. And so this is a way we can stop the unnecessary layers of suffering that just come from our mind, just come from the way we think about things. Does that make sense? So if you're using Buddhism as a refuge, if you're using it as a a source, then you have all sorts of information that can help you stuff. Like there are ways, that you develop a skill in meditation, you develop a little skill in concentration, you read about the teachings, you understand the mind better. You really start to understand, that what are negative states of mind, what are positive states of mind, what leads to them, we can start to understand what are positive actions, what are negative actions. And so we have some guidelines, because if we just follow the storyline we have in our head, generally none of us would be here. We'd all be delightfully happy and just da 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 da. So we sort of don't know what we're doing when we're trying to have peace of mind, So now, there are definite guidelines in all religious faiths, we kind of agree on what things are definitely not to be done. Don't do that. So then we have to see, like, if you don't do any of the things that are considered non-virtues. So in Buddhism, what are the non-virtues? I can't hear. Killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, divisive speech, idle speech, harsh speech.
Harsh speech,
Then the mind,
wrong view,
Wrong intention.
Anger?
sort of malice. It's like an extreme form of anger, and covetousness, kind of a extreme form of greed. So most of us are pretty good, probably on the stealing, killing, kind of thing. Sexual misconduct, we'd have to probably look a little further to see what's going on with that, because that's really about protecting other people's relationships, your relationship and others' relationships. But covetousness, really wanting what someone else has. And kind of, it can, we get jealous instead, we're not happy for the fact that they have it, even though we don't, greed can do some weird things to our minds. It also can make us think we have to have more and more and more and more. And so we lose sight of what actually matters to us, like our relationships, we don't, we're just busy working and accumulating money and stuff. Malice is when we have, it starts off as this little aversion, somebody we don't like, somebody who does things we don't like, says things we don't like, various things, and it just gets stronger and stronger to the point where you could hurt them. If you had the opportunity, you could hurt them, Those two minds, this mind of extreme attachment where you just, you see something you want and then you can't let it go. You just keep, after it. And, eventually you might let it go and you just replace it with another one. So, okay, now don't crave that anymore, but I'm going to crave this. And people do all sorts of terrible things due to their attachment. Sometimes that's what causes stealing. That sometimes causes, just thinking you need to work for more money, that it's just, you can't get enough. You can't be satisfied with your standard of living because it's, you want more, 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 more. Wars start because of these things, people are harmed, by this kind of energy. So we may not, like steal. Say nobody in here steals. Then we want to really look at what does it mean to protect the possessions of others? Like the belongings of your company. So where you work, are you respectful of the things you use at work and the fact that they belong to someone else? Then you want to look at, like, are you stealing time away from someone. Idle speech is a way we kind of steal time. When we waste someone's time talking about nothing. So there, we want to be able to start to discern, the subtleties of what is a positive action. Are you really generous? Are you generous when it's convenient? Do you have, it's like, I've ever, like offered someone a ride and then gotten really kind of impatient because they don't seem to be coming anytime now. I'm ready to go. And then you like really get annoyed, that so now it's inconvenient. But instead of, just saying, I really do need to leave now, and I'm happy to give you a ride, but I have an appointment and I need to get there. You just start to really get mad. Who's making you wait, So that's like, you're not really being generous. You're only being generous if it's convenient, and you don't take responsibility for that. Like you don't let them in on that secret. When I said I could give you a ride, I do have another appointment. I have a time limit, so you don't let them know. And then you get mad at them for not reading your mind. Or you just think, aren't they rude? They're making me wait now. We just make up a story and it's going to be the other person's fault because that's our preference. So, so we want to be able to investigate ways in which we're self-centered, where we're really just taking care of ourselves. And it may sound like we're taking care of someone else, but we're really just trying to get what we want. We want to be able to be aware of that. Because self-centeredness does not lead to happiness. Because we don't have control over all this stuff out here. And so if we're trying to control everything out here, it's an agitated state. Well, yeah.
What about relationships that may ultimately be somewhat transactional? So it's self-centered for you, but it's self-centered for the other person, but it kind of works out to everybody's benefit.
Then you want to watch your ethics. Maybe like, you go into a store, you want to buy something in the store. Everything about that's transactional, But so you just, that's when you want to make sure, like, say they charge you the wrong amount. Do you say, I think you charged me the wrong amount, when it's in your favor? It's you want them make the transaction clean. You're not trying to cheat them, they're not trying to cheat you. Yeah.
Whether it's in your favor or not,
That's what I'm saying.
I think ethically, right, then you should be bringing it up either way.
Yeah, well, or at least when you might be taking from them. Nothing wrong with saying that's not what it was marked on the shelf, all that kind of stuff. But it's mostly this attitude of like trying to get away with something. Like, I just got a, blah, blah, blah. It's like when you go to the vending machine, and you get two instead of one, and yay, there's no person there, it's just a machine. Oh, it's a machine, oh, well.
Good luck.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really matter. You could let the vending machine know your machine's broken, just like when it won't take your money and you don't get anything, or it takes your money and you don't get anything, we tell the vendor to fix their machine. We might not be so quick to tell them to fix it when it's giving you 2 for 1. But that's sort of that thing of just really realizing that even if it's transactional, there are ethical ways to do things. And also there are, you want to watch, you can be transactional and not have kind speech. If you're treating it as transactional and both parties don't know that, if you think, got to be clear to them, this is just transactional, That's saying you can read their mind, and that's not true. So you want, we want to have clarity. And we can't control the other people. So you can be kind, be patient, be accurate in terms of like the cost of something, and not get treated the same way back. That's their problem. If we want to have peace of mind, we don't have to get mad. We can let them know that, like, I think you've charged me the wrong amount. We can just not take this, not pay for it, and decide, well, I'm not going to do this transaction. But we don't have to change our peace of mind based on how someone else is treating us. And that's tough for us to get because we think it reflects on us when it really doesn't, unless you make it reflect on you. But this is where, when we talk about developing a certain confidence in our own ability to assess our behavior, because people have their own stuff going on. And strangers, if it's some sort of transactional thing, you won't know what's going on with this person. So that we don't need to worry about what they think of us. They're probably not thinking about us at all. It's really, now, this is different than working with, your partner, trying to, your relationship issues and stuff like that. That's something that, you want to clarify. You want to have conversations to be able to clarify misunderstandings, to kind of, or to be able to say, I felt hurt when this happened, can we talk about it? So that you can clarify if there was something wrong that you did that the other person felt hurt by, and then, and so you're playing this kind of game back and forth of, your turn to hurt. Because it may not be true. So you might be able to find out, oh, I was in a bad place when we had that conversation. I'm sorry if I was dismissive. I'll try to let you know that I'm not hearing you, because I'm in a different place. So we have to really try to be clear and open and take risk in our communications. Because what's one of the big risks we take when we ask for something?
Get a no.
Get a no. I mean, if we expect that first of all, our happiness depends on them saying yes, or that their value of me depends on what they say yes, then we've made it into some sort of hidden agenda. If we haven't told them that. And so we kind of play games with people this way, where we're just, we really want to find out if they care enough about us to do such and such. And we're setting them up, when there's only one right answer, So we need to be able to ask for what we want or need or whatever, and be willing to take a no. I don't know how I got on this subject. But I guess it's the subtle ways in which we try to manipulate situations into getting what we want, because we think getting what we want is where happiness is. But you can imagine that if you have relationships with people where you can say exactly how you really feel, ask for what you really need, just and share your preferences in the world, and not feel judged, and that you can hear their same stuff without judging them, how much better that would be. Not having the hidden agendas, not, feeling like your worth is being determined whether they say yes or not, all those things. So, and we can only find those things out if we're looking at our own mind, so we can see, oh, I feel a little, annoyed that they didn't want to go to see this movie. Just make, but we don't say anything about it. I've had friends who've had to, they're in their relationships, they have to take turns on who picks the movie because they don't like each other's movies. And they just had to, it's your turn, it's your choice, and then the other person goes and doesn't complain, because they're supposedly doing something together. So, sometimes it has to be very direct, so. Yeah.
That's the reason why I actually watch Lifetime movies. Unless my wife used to like to watch them. And it was like, okay.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen
Take one
Hallmark
for the
movies because my stepmom liked to watch them.
Christmas time. It's a marathon.
Yeah, yeah. Like I have friends who say, I don't want to see anybody killed. I don't want an unhappy ending. It limits your choices. But hey, okay, I don't have to stay there and watch. It's just, but if I do stay there and watch, if I spend the whole time going, oh, this is so absurd. No one acts like that. Nobody knows how to cook cookies like that. I'll go on and on and on, then I'm not playing fair. So it's this kind of silliness, but we can really hurt each other if we can't talk about how we really are feeling, so, and we can't talk about how we're really feeling if we're not looking, if we don't know, if we don't get good at seeing, like, oh, I have a tendency to have this, little catch when we're talking about such and such. This subject must be a button for me, and I need to figure out what that's about. So stuff like that. So the more we pay attention to when we get irritated or just scared, just that slightest bit, getting impatient, the sooner we can feel it in our bodies or recognize it for what it is, then we can choose. Am I going to let this build? Or am I going to realize I'm getting impatient because I have another thing I need to get to and it's not this person's fault? I may just have to say, I need to go now, whatever it is. But we can't do any of these things if we don't know what's going on. So watching our mind and being able to say, oh, I'm getting angry. Or I'm building resentment now. I'm going to hold a grudge if I keep with this mind. I didn't like it when it happened in the first place. And now I'm rehearsing it in my mind thinking, yeah, that really was rude. And we're just making it bigger and bigger and bigger.
So like going into like victimhood, like how do you prevent? You said we have to watch how that we don't get mad and we have to protect ourselves, and
Mm-mm.
I guess it's just
We
perspective.
don't have to watch ourselves if we don't get mad. We have to see that getting mad is a choice. Right now, when these kind of emotions come up, like anger, we're out of control. It's a reaction. If we can start seeing what precedes that, and often we learn that by looking back, we kind of go, whoa, I really got mad. And you might not say anything, but you had, inside you're going, hey. You want to look back and kind of go, what preceded that? So that you can start to get familiar what your buttons are, and then you get to choose whether or not you want to respond in that way. And then you have to come up with reasons why maybe getting mad isn't the direction you want to go.
So if someone's disrespectful, I'm feeling it and I don't have to, but I can just say, I don't like your attitude, or, I know it's about them, but it's hard to separate that for me.
Well, it's hard for all of us,
Yeah.
but that's because we think it's all about us. Our starting point's wrong.
But sometimes if you don't say anything, people get the wrong idea and they think they can just,
That's why it's not about just shutting up.
okay.
It's about acknowledging, that when you say this, I feel disrespected, but you don't have to actually think that you are worthy of disrespect. You don't have to defend yourself.
In counseling, I tried to teach people that some people say, feeling words and they could never get to the feeling. It was always, well, he's just stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, some people are really far away from being able to really tap into language that doesn't just fuel this kind of feeling.
Yeah.
But we have to, and so that's why we have to start recognizing our own buttons and all that stuff. But it isn't about being a doormat. It's about recognizing that just because someone says you're an idiot doesn't make you an idiot.
I don't want to be around it.
And you don't have to be.
Yeah.
That's how we learn who we want to hang out with.
Yeah.
But if we expect to be able to change that person, why? Why do you think you can change them? What's so special about you that you could tell somebody else? It's sort of like, now, if you're raising a child and you need to, you're trying to teach them social graces, and teach them all sorts of things. So that's appropriate. And you could talk to your partner because you want to continue the relationship, so it's appropriate then. And it's appropriate for them to tell you, it's not just one-sided, so but someone who's just an acquaintance or a person on the street, it doesn't matter, And so it's just, and judging them is also, you don't know enough to judge them. They may be having an incredibly bad day. So they're just at that point of just cursing everybody out. Now you can sit there and have compassion for them because their method is not going to work. It's not going to make them feel better. It may make them feel more in control. But in the end, that doesn't feel better. Because when you have a false sense of control, you're not actually in control. And that's an agitated state as well, because it doesn't match reality. Anyway. So really looking at what makes a state of mind negative. Really getting a sense. In Buddhism, a negative mind is one that leads to suffering. Yourself or others. We call them disturbing emotions because it makes the mind unpeaceful. So really understanding, so that love is not like that. Cravings like that. So it's not just about aversion. It's not just about things we don't like. It's also about things we think we have to have in order to be happy. And so really getting familiar with, happiness is an inside state. It's not an outside state. It's not about getting what you want. It's about being happy with what you have. But being able to discern that, I'm getting a little agitated. And then having the wisdom to not make it worse. make it greater. So like when like we've talked, you know, when you have some sort of disagreement with somebody and then you get on your phone and you tell all your friends about it, you're rehearsing it. You're making it much bigger than it is. And you're carrying it around. It's like, oh, I want to feel bad a little longer now. I'm going to describe how I feel to all my friends. And because I want validation for it, it's appropriate for me to feel bad. Really? That's a choice you want to make. We need to, yeah,
I was just gonna say, so how do you deal with that then?
deal with what?
Well, just like what you said, deal with the fact that you have this feeling. And as an example, I have a friend recently that was judgmental, and I tried to, you know, explain my side, and she pretty much cut me off. And so I wanted to tell my son about it. And like you said, I thought, what's the point? What can he do about it? What am I trying to
Yeah,
achieve here?
Exactly.
You know, I think that a lot about my actions. And so I kept it to myself,
Yeah,
and which as you can see, I'm still angry,
yeah.
right? Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, you have to look at it in many different pieces. First, we have to sit with the discomfort of loss because we're hurt. So we might say we're mad, but probably underneath that, we're hurt. And we have to sit with that. We have to get comfortable with our discomfort and not run away from it and turn it into something it's not, which is anger. And some of us have habits of that. We're so uncomfortable with the feeling of hurt that we'd rather be angry. So we get angry. Other people cannot deal with being angry at all. And they'd rather be hurt. So they transform that. So we're not allowing ourselves to just sit with whatever it is, so that it doesn't transform into something bigger or worse. And we have to deal with loss, so it's just this, it's like, yes, we can share our loss with someone. I've lost a friend recently, Now, do we need validation for that? That's, once we develop some inner wisdom, we don't really need validation from someone else. And we don't ever need validation for the fact that we feel a loss, Now, if we think because of that loss, we're not going to have any friends, that's a lie. Things change all the time. People come and go.
Is it that you just think, which I think a lot, it is what it is?
Well, it is what it is. That's true. That's a true statement. Whether it supports you is another story. We need to comfort ourselves when we're hurt. We don't have to get it from someone else, like by saying, I deserve to be angry. They deserve my anger, sort of kind of thing. But who's suffering? Especially if they walked out of your life, who's suffering? You are. So do you deserve the anger? Maybe not. See, this is what we need to understand. They like to say, being angry at someone else is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. It's not an effective strategy. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel that sometimes it's really hard to not vent, or, like there's therapy for a reason. But I think that, I don't go telling I don't have that many friends, but like telling everybody something just to bring attention to myself. I think that's separate from you having a confidant, like a one friend that you just can talk to about anything. But sometimes even them, I think, could get annoyed by.
Yeah, it gets old, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Don't you like hearing other people's stories ad nauseum? Yeah.
Is there a time when anger is appropriate or when it can be useful?
Okay. You could say that the kind of anger that helps you recognize injustice. Yeah, I don't know about her. I mean, I studied that way back when, I was a child of an alcoholic. I had a lot of anger, so yeah. You might want to also look at Tujin Chodron's book on what's it called? It's not healing anger. Oh, wait,
Accepting as is, accepting things as
no,
is,
Oh, it's just dealing,
being comfortable
dealing
with.
with anger, isn't it? Just dealing with anger.
I don't remember. Anyway, because it has a Buddhist take to it, so, but this, so yes, if like sometimes anger can be what makes you realize, oh, this is just not right, when there's injustice. And so that might, but if you keep carrying the anger, your ability to make changes in the situation go down because there's no wisdom with anger. That's the problem with anger. So yes, I mean, sometimes it is anger that helps us realize, oh, that's just not right, but life's not fair. It's not like we're going to always, think that you're always going to get treated appropriately. None of those things are going to happen because we're all kind of a mess. So we mistreat each other, and then we have entire systems that harm people. So we want to be able to lend our voice to making those changes in the world. Absolutely. But anger is not a good fuel for it. Wisdom's a really good fuel for it. And that again is having confidence in that you think that you're seeing is something that needs to be fixed and can be fixed with more dialogue. But I worked for an anti-racism site years ago, and when the World Conference on Racism was taking place in South Africa, I had a lot of meetings to go to in this, people who were going, and it was really quite telling. The people who'd been in this, fight for change for decades, who were still angry, really didn't have the speech that would help others understand their point of view. And the ones who were no longer angry, they were quite confident it was just wrong. They didn't have to prove it to anyone, they could, hear other, they had a better language with which to negotiate with, and stay in the, keep speaking to it, because it's exhausting to, try to affect social change. It takes a long, long time. And anger is not a really good way to sustain it. So we really do have to look, do I just, it's one thing, yes, you may turn to a friend for some of that comfort, like, but we need to be careful about blaming, It's like, when we're really looking for someone else to validate, yeah, anybody would feel angry, then you're supporting this idea that anger is a good response. Anger is suffering. If you never had to be angry again, you'd probably go for it. So it can definitely help us identify injustice. Definitely can help us, identify that some behavior has to stop. Those kind of things. But the key, like, you want your wisdom to come in. And if you're, and it's hard to do that if you just keep revolving your thoughts around the fact that this is just not right, because that's not going to do it. And that can get in the way of making good decisions about which relationships to end, which, whatever. So, but the world is not going to meet our view. There are too many people in it for all of us to agree on, on anything. So it's always going to have, but however many people there are, there's going to be that many opinions. So developing this inner confidence of, what's important to us, how we want to treat each other, it's sort of like you can't control how other people are going to act, but you can decide how you're going to act, and by your acting in that way, you can be modeling for other people that, this is one way to act. Some people don't have a clue there are other options. They really don't. They don't know that, they think anger is the only way to get, your just desserts. Oh, and it's not true, but it's what they've been taught and it's what they believe in.
Sometimes it's manipulative.
Oh gosh, yes. All of it can be that way. We're really skilled at that.
Or what?
Human beings are really skilled at manipulation. It's all that practice with rationalization.
Oh,
All the stories we make up. Okay. It's about getting to know ourselves really well and then seeing where we think we're going in the right direction and where we might think I'm not going in such a good direction here. Maybe I need to approach this in some new ways. And so then you have to figure out, what do I need to be able to do that? So those and reasons help. Being able, to support your desire for change based on some reasons will support you when it gets hard. Oh, I really, yeah, I got something really clever and mean to say right now, but I really don't want to be that person. So don't say anything. Uh, And of course, so I turn like to the teachings of the Buddha, I'll just, to things I've read and I've learned, about, how much more powerful kindness is, how much better I feel if I don't regret what I've said, those kinds of things to support me. I don't need someone else to tell me, that anger just makes me suffer. I've kind of learned that one. Doesn't mean I don't get angry, just means I get angry a lot less. So it's that kind of way. Yeah.
So question about managing anger. So as you described that, I'm thinking that sometimes putting it aside makes you less angry. It doesn't really feel like the anger towards the situation went away. You just put it aside. Is it the same thing if the outcome is you're no longer angry?
I think there's a difference between realizing, oh, I'm getting angry here and I don't want to go in that direction. And so you set it aside. And then every time you think about it again, you kind of go, okay, I know where this is going. So you set it aside again. Eventually, though, if you can, you want to be able to have the situation arise in your mind and be able to see why anger is not the response you want to make. That it's just no help. That's different from suppressing it. Where you just shove it down and no, you need to acknowledge that you're angry.
you stay with the discomfort and learn
Yeah.
from it and
Yeah.
investigate it.
Yeah. You sit with it like, oh, whatever just happened was very unpleasant for me. And I could get mad, and I bet you everybody I call would think I was right in being mad, but what does feeling mad do for me?
Keeps you from getting to the answer on how to change.
Keeps you from getting to the answer. It also keeps you from being able to really investigate the situation. Are you mad because you were cheated? Were you mad just because they didn't say the right words? They mad, what is it? What is it you're mad about? I mean, it's like, you go back to your childhood, sticks and stones can break the words that never hurt me, because it's true. You know, this whole idea of how dare you disrespect me? Who's defining that? You know, are you on the same page?
You know, who is it? Who's judging?
Who's judging? You know, so if it's not you judging yourself, then why worry about it? I mean, we should always check up, you know, and say, do I do that? Am I like that? You know, and then if you feel like, no, I can't think of, you know, then I can see how we might interpret it that way, but you know, I don't think that's what I'm doing. And you can just move on, you know. But this idea that somebody's words or someone not liking you is a big deal, it isn't a big deal.
And then if you have compassion, you see their anger or their complaining, maybe you see that they're suffering.
Yes. People don't say mean things when they're happy.
Mhm.
But then how do you help someone like that? Because,
This isn't about changing other people, Melissa.
oh, right, okay. Okay,
You know, we need to just change us because that's only we can model behavior for others, you know,
okay,
but
right.
thinking that, you know, and you know, you can help people see things, but not everybody, you know, we also have to be able to let go and realize they're not ready for that, you know. So but Buddhism is not about changing other people. You know, the Buddha can't change us. You know, enlightened beings can't get in our minds and clean them up because they would have done that if they could do that. We have to change. You know, we created it. These are our habits of mind. So we need to recognize whether they're skillful or not and do the work of changing them. But, you know, this idea that our worth is determined by other people's words, you might want to question that belief. You know, why do we even think that? Oh, I mean, anybody been a teenager? Teenagers are delightful. You know, we have to ask ourselves what is, you know, reliable. You know, if we trust our parents, they might have some reliable opinions, and we might want to ask them, do I come off as arrogant? You know, whatever. But in general, the way people speak to each other is coming from their own side, you know? So we can control our side, or at least try to look deeply.
That's big.
It is big, but it's the only way. Because we really can't control people outside of us. And at the end of the day, how we act is what we think about. You know, we can, you know, it's nice at the end of the day, think, well, I acted like an adult. That's nice. You know, that has value. That will help me in the long run. You know, and it is hard. I mean, it's, you know, when you are a teenager, you don't have a lot of control over anything. You don't have control over where you go to school. You don't have, you know, it's hard, but you're going to grow out of that. Yay! You will enter adulthood and be able to, you know, have a little more choices. You know, so, but just like, you know, if something bad is happening for us in our lives, something's going wrong or whatever, it's hard for us to you know, we really have to work extra hard to watch our speech, watch our facial expressions, you know, that we don't bring it to everybody else, you know. You know, the same thing's going on, you know, like, you know, the reason why when we're young and we need the guidance of parents is because we have nothing settled. Our brain hasn't, you know, we fully developed. Our hormones are going bananas. You know, all sorts of things are going with the body. We don't understand much yet. Sometimes I think about how they say it's like you're 10 before you can really use reason. 10 years old. So if you're 15, you've had 5 years of being able to use, people need to cut each other some slack. So it's really, and it doesn't happen, until you're in like the late 20s that you've got some stability of mind,
If this I doesn't exist,
hmm
then when my granddaughter is snippy and I see that I could be that way in my past at times.
Oh, yeah.
But that's it. No,
Okay, so it's not that the I doesn't exist. I's
from its
an,
own side, it doesn't exist.
it's a label, it's a convenient label, The way we exist, we are not this solid entity with a consistent personality throughout our lives. We're not, there's nothing, we're not born a certain way or whatever. We have, the body changes constantly throughout our lives. Our mind has we learn new things, we let go of other things, can't even remember how we thought about such and such, 30 years ago. I mean, that sort of seems to be the time limit. That's why they talk about the generation gap, that 30 years is like, we can't, I bet I'd never forget what it was like to be a teenager. I can't remember. It really blows my mind, so I can remember how miserable I was, but that's about it. But I can't remember about what. It's just really funny. Shocking. Because I was really clinging. I was really holding on to those. You said that it's just that, this idea, we're just a series of moments of body and mind. And thinking we're stuck, it's just not true. We can make ourselves stuck by thinking we can't change, we can't do something differently, we can't reframe it, we can't, catch on, and we can't do it if we don't pay attention. We just keep on going, blah, 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 blah. And then when we're hit in the face with something that we have to deal with, like loss is a biggie, and then you realize, oh my goodness, I can't just keep going on, it's that because there's nothing that's the loss is loss. So it's an interesting, we have to see if we're clinging to, oh, but I am just this way. Because it's not true. We're this way because of our habits. And we can change habits. And then some habits we have are great. The habit of always wanting to jump in to help. That's a great habit. We have to make sure they want our help. That's also a good habit. But I mean, so if you may always be generous, that's a great habit. You want to keep that up. So it's just, we're a mixture of things. And we just need to check up on what does it say about what we believe? And is it true? The Buddha said we have the potential to all become enlightened. We have a great starting point. We are not stuck. But this idea that we want to hold on to mistakes that people make and somehow hold them accountable, we might want to look at that. And that's what anger is kind of doing. Like, how dare you treat me this way?
But like, can there be appropriate consequences where it's
Of course it can
a
be.
consequence, but at the same time you're not holding on to the anger, or you holding on to the anger the whole time that the consequence.
You'll have to check up,
Okay.
because of course you can walk away from relationships. Say, okay, I'm sorry, but I'm not dealing with this anymore, and walk away. But it's just like when you discipline a child. You discipline them so that they will learn that their behavior was not acceptable and they need to learn this to be socially accepted in the world, but you're not mad at them, at all, that's your job, is to help them grow up to understand how the world works the best you can, and help them with their behaviors. It's no different in any other thing. We don't have to be mad to decide not going to work for me. No. We don't need that justification. What we need is wisdom. No. And if we can't, I mean, it's like a Shanti Davis thing, if there's if something's happening and you can fix it, just fix it. If something's happening and you can't do anything about it, why worry about it? I mean, it's just like, that's just pointless. Do you still beat yourself up about choices you made that you just you really want to look at that happen and go, why am I doing this to myself? We don't make perfect choices. We make mistakes. Everybody does.
Are some mistakes that are like really hard on you, could they have been like karma? Like, you shouldn't have done it, or
It's a habit. Karma just means action, it's just the cause and effect. If you're still doing something,
but it's almost like if something was done to us unconsciously.
no, that's just habit.
Okay.
We are so familiar with so many different things, the way we think, that we just become reactive. It's like a reflex. But it's because it's a habit. Like Buddhism wouldn't call instinct. It's just familiarity, So, it's just something that you're accustomed to.
And are the habits from this lifestyle and past lifestyles?
Since beginningless time. So when your children are born and then you see differences between them in your own family, I mean, you could have 3 kids and they're very different. They're bringing their habits with them.
What's an example of those habits that you're trying to?
Well, like my kid brother, even when he's this big, was generous. He was always generous. Anytime he went out with my mom, he'd go, oh, we have to bring something back to Leslie Karen. He's just born that way. He had that habit from the beginning. Buddhism would just say it comes from habits born in previous lives. Some people are angry from the time they're bringing that habit with them. We have lots of habits.
If it's a good habit,
We want to
And
continue
does-
it.
does that mean you're on a higher path to enlightenment than somebody who is born?
Not necessarily. No one's born bad. Some people have a lot of bad habits from an early age. They're not bad. They just learn the wrong habits.
Serial killers are bad.
No, serial killers are disturbed. Their mind is really, they've now conjoined an action with pleasure that doesn't go together.
I mean,
That's habit.
nobody teaches a 5-year-old to kill a pet or something.
Right? They brought it with them. It's a habit. That's all.
So,
And we don't want to keep going in that direction. But we can't necessarily change other people.
Right.
But they could have different conditions because we're a mixed bag, It's like even kids who do that do other things that are nice to people, But so it just depends on what the conditions are.
and how is you're saying those bad habits are not necessarily a result of bad karma, but could be the result of
Karma, the word karma means action.
Right.
So you do an action in the past, you're more likely to do it again. and you keep doing it, it becomes a stronger and stronger habit. To do it again, yeah.
Isn't karma the result of the habit?
No, that's merit.
Not?
No,
Oh,
karma is action. The law of cause and effect is sometimes referred to as karma, but the karma is the action we do, body, speech, and mind. It has an effect.
so habit is karma.
No, habit is habit. Habit is repeated actions that become a habit.
And it has potential to be very strong, the habit.
Yep. Okay, so I call them habits because we could get stuck in this idea of bad. They're just habits. We've been training in them for a long time. You know, yeah, sometimes we don't meet the condition. I was thinking about my mom. My mom had a drinking problem, but she lived in Memphis the first part of her life, first half of her life, I guess. And she really never met the condition of drinking. Well, she got married. She was living in New Orleans.
Oh,
It's hard to walk down the street and not have a drink in New Orleans. I mean, there's a bar in every corner, you know, and you can drink outside, you know, and it's a big part of their social scheme. So she clearly had the disposition to become an addict, but she has to meet the condition. You know, alcohol also has to exist. So if it hadn't happened in this life, it doesn't mean she would not happen in another life. You know, it's just, you know, both causes and conditions have to be present for the result of actions to ripen. You know, the seeds that we plant on our mind stream. So the actions plant a seed, so to speak, and they produce a result, but they still have to meet conditions for it to produce a result. You know, well, guess what? We don't like most of what happens to us, so we get mad. We always meet that condition that we're not getting what we want. You know, so if we have the habit of thinking, you know, anger is an appropriate response to not getting what you want, you're going to meet that pretty much in every life you have. You know, because there's no living being that's not meeting conditions of not getting what you want. You know, even if you're an insect, they don't have the condition of probably having anger. Insects. I really don't think mosquitoes bite us out of anger.
When you say condition, do you mean opportunity?
Yeah, sort of. So all sorts of causes and conditions are what, you know, allows a seed to ripen. And since we don't know our histories, only Buddhists can really tell, you know, what was the action that eventually ripened, you know, eons later. And we don't need to know precisely. We can just learn how negative actions that cause harm, lead to negative results. You will be harmed in a similar way in the future. So when bad things happen to you, one of the things that you can use to keep yourself from, you know, just getting enraged, you know, it's not fair. Well, now you created the cause, you know, so you're part of that chain of events, you know. So you can choose, well, I don't want to be the recipient kind of thing forever. So I'm going to stop treating other people that way, you know, so that you can, you know, see. Same thing is true of good habits. You know, you carry those with you too.
How does the Buddha feel about like genetic predisposition?
A result of imprints of seeds. He didn't discuss genetic imprint.
Well, I'm sure, but like, you know, 'cause
So
I'm
I can't
thinking
really answer that question directly.
past lives make you this life. But
Well,
it
I mean,
also-
think about it.
your parents kind of,
But you're born into those families.
Yeah.
That's karma ripening as well. The way your body is. Part of it is just the all-pervasive suffering. You know, human bodies can be harmed. They don't have armor. You know, it's really easy to hurt a human body. You know, that's just the nature of being in a human body. You know, insects don't have long lives. That's the nature of being born in an insect body. But you created the cause to have those short lives, and you created the cause to, like I've told you this story, but like was doing a retreat, and every day at dusk, in this kind of shamatha retreat, you're not supposed to move, you're not supposed to, very quiet. I had 5 mosquitoes, one in each ear and one in each nostril, and one that just generally went around every day at dusk. And so I just have to, okay, what would have created the cause for this? And I just thought my ex-husband would say it was the way I ran my mouth. Just so I could cope with it, that it's just, because you can tolerate it or not tolerate it. I chose to tolerate it because of what? Pride. I didn't want to be the nun that had to get up because, these stupid mosquitoes were making me crazy. So,
I was gonna ask you if it was a problem if you actually moved, but you just answered it yourself. It was you not wanting to be that person.
yeah,
If you could have moved if you needed to.
yeah. I mean, that's a choice.
Yeah.
It's just a choice. And we often make the choice to tolerate something. People work their whole lives for, in work circumstances where they're tolerating because they need the job, not because they like it. It's because they need to get paid. They need an income, so you put up with all kinds of things. Most of the world doesn't get a lot of choice in what kind of jobs they get. What's the nice aspect of those conditions? Is you're not always craving something better. When you have lots of choices, there's a part of you that says, oh, maybe it's better over here. When the Berlin Wall came down, and a lot of the East Berliners said, I can't believe how many choices of sausage you have in the store. It's too many choices. It's ridiculous, that whole thing. But it's because that's what happens. The more you have, the more you crave. That's that covetousness. The more we can just be good in our own minds, peaceful, okay, this is what it is, and go, if I, can I change it? No, I don't have any control over it. It's already happened too, but so I'm not going to worry about it. Or, oh, I think I can make this, do this and it'll be better. So you do that. It's not about just being stuck. It's about recognizing when we have some power and when we don't. Making our boss treat us well is not really in our power. If they treat us again in a way that's against the law, you go to human resources, but you still might not end up with what you want. But that's that's all right. Doesn't mean you should just put up with it. It's just doing the right thing does not mean you'll get what you want. Doing the right thing means when you go to bed at night, you don't have regrets. And that's very peaceful. So we have to, we have to remind ourselves all the time that, oh, if I pay attention, I may be able to notice when I'm getting disturbed. And then I can choose, how I respond. And it may be walking away. So if you have, if you ever purchase something and while you're purchasing it, you're thinking, I really shouldn't be buying this. When you get better at it, you'll notice before you purchase that I really don't need this. And this is going to cause me anxiety because it's really it's more than I can afford, blah, 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 blah. You can go down that path. But, we just have to get good at being able to tell. And then we have to really get good at being able to discern what's going on. Does it mean something has to change? Because sometimes it's just oh, I feel this way because what I'm trying to do is brand new. and I'm not familiar and I'm uncomfortable. I'm nervous, because when we try to change, it can be hard and we like don't know what we're doing. And so it's like anything else, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to make, you're going to not do it, all sorts of things will happen. Yeah,
What about mental illnesses like bipolar and schizophrenia and
it's a karmic result.
it's a karmic result?
Yeah. So you've
Either-
left some imprint on your mind, and if some and the result is, in this life, not in every life, just in this life, what ripens is some, chemical imbalance in the brain or something, And if you look at human history and just on this world, this human history, we've done unbelievably nasty things to
Yes.
people and to animals.
Oh,
So the thought
still
of,
doing it.
well, yeah, but so we've created the cause for results like that. It's really not, it's really not hard to imagine. You don't have to believe it, but to me, it makes sense. It's just like everything else. There's cause and effect, cause and effect. We see it all the time. What's frustrating when you introduce consciousness to it is it doesn't ripen right away. It's not like the seed you plant in the ground. And even the seed that you plant in the ground, whether it grows or not, is somewhat dependent on your past actions. That sucks, doesn't it? Yeah. Anyway,
Don't have a green thumb,
yeah,
not at all.
when I lived on a third floor walk up, I had a friend who had a greenhouse, and so I would grow things from leaves, and I had like 165 really nice plants. Well, I'm only going to walk them down a 3rd floor. I threw them over the balcony. I've never been able to grow plants. Who knows? Anyway, all right. So we have Sunday teaching this week. We have Tuesday night, we have class. Wednesday night is medicine Buddha Puja, and Thursday night is class, and then I'm done. Venerable Amy shows up for the following Sunday
You done for how long?
till January.
Where are you going?
Maybe nowhere, maybe North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah. So I used to be the resident teacher here. I'm no longer that.
Oh,
Now I'm a sporadic teacher.
Oh.
Yeah, I retired in May. See how long that lasts. So, but so we had Venerable Calden was here, or tried to be here for the summer, but did a lot of teachings over the summer, and he'll continue to do teachings throughout the year. A lot of it's on Zoom because he's helping his father, who lives in Brazil. And then Venerable Amy will be here for 3 weeks, I think. I'm not sure. So whatever, but I'll be here January, February, and March. Anyway,
So November, they'll be in person or Zoom on.
now Venerable Amy will be here in person.
Okay.
So. Okay, by the way, if you don't know, there's a movie at the Fort Lauderdale Savoy near, on His Holiness. It's some little documentary with His Holiness speaking. Monday night and Tuesday night. I'm going at 7 for the 5:30 on Monday night show.
Monday?
Only next week?
But this, I sent an email out to some people, but I don't know anybody's email. And I don't have control over the group email goes out. So, and the person who does has been out of town. So anyway, but
Is the Savoy a little theater?
yeah, it's a little, they're having an international film festival.
Is it in Pompano or
It's full Lauderdale.
all the way in Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen it.
So, so they're having some international film festival. So it happens to be.
Nice. So what you're saying is that if I come on Sunday
Mhm.
and if I do all this, I could possibly have you 5 days in a row. Sunday, go to the movie Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, puja, and
Yeah.
that's a good way to end
a stretch.
We'll see. I don't know if I
Yeah.
can make it.
And if you want to come over and help me put screens back into my condo, you know, that will add another day. So, and you want to, yeah, I have all sorts of little tasks like that. Anybody know how to paint a closet? Anyway, so, and I did finally find the hardware for that bed frame. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So anyway. But for the
I'm
screens,
on-
I
I'm
need
on the
height.
List of volunteers.
Yeah, I know. I
can't
need to
do
get
it
you
by
and Bob
myself.
over to help with the screens.
Okay.
'Cause I need height. It's really hard. I tried to put them back.
Are you trying to?
I took them out.
Get them on the roller?
No, they're just, they are so poorly designed, you know, like it's so easy to have them go out the window and I'm on the 3rd floor. I don't really want it to go out the window.
Oh,
And I'm not quite strong enough. And you also have to be tall because it goes to the ceiling, you know, not quite the ceiling. That's an exaggeration. Close.
Goes
Anyway,
up there, though. They're high.
and I already bit one. So now it doesn't do it's no longer functions as a screen,
Oh,
you know, that's life. So
Samsung.
Samsara. I created the cause for that. I just can't imagine me being so expedient that I broke something. Yes, I can. Okay. So at the end of things, this is one of those ways that we try to help our actions have merit. You know, so at the beginning, we try to think that we're doing stuff for the benefit of all sentient beings, just for ourselves, but also for the benefit of all the people around us. That way, big view, you know. Anything positive that we do, that we think, that we say, you know, creates merits. That's what that word means. So it's really a seed in your, you know, on your mind stream. It's not literally a seed, but that will ripen in the future as something positive, you know. And if it's been, you know, dedicated for the benefit of others, you know, you might meet the spiritual teachings in the future, you know, kind of thing. So, but we don't want to be greedy with it. We want to, you know, keep this idea of we're doing it for others. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way that I may follow their perfect example. I know I marked it. There it is, red. Okay. Yep. Oops. How'd that happen? What did I do? What did I do? Because of all the merits of the 3 times created by me and all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and other sentient beings, may there be no wars, famines, disease, quarreling, fighting, or unhappy minds. May there be great prosperity, and may everything needed be easily obtained. May all the human beings in the world be guided by spiritual leaders teaching only Dharma, and may everyone enjoy the happiness of Dharma. May everyone have perfect conditions and have only compassion and love for each other in their mind streams, and may they only benefit and never harm each other. And the long life prayer for His Holiness. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until Samsara ends. And for the swift return of Thomas of Rinpoche. Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losam father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that's never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Yeah. You know, I just realized my picture was never up.
Oh.
Sorry about
I
that.
was about to say, I didn't thought you just did it on purpose from the beginning. And I was gonna say it's nice not to see you. When- at the
Okay.
end.
Sorry,
Sorry.
I just totally missed
It
that.
was it was a wonderful thing. It made me think a different way, actually.
That's good. Well, hello, everybody. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very
Sorry about
much.
that.
Thank you very much.
Good night, thank you.
Take good care.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Tendron.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye, thank
Good
you.
night, Melissa. All right.